All right, let's get right into it. Back in 2017, a paper dropped with this really bold, kind of poetic title. And you know what? That single paper didn't just nudge AI forward, it completely rewrote the rulebook. Today, we are breaking down Attention is All You Need. Yeah, that's the one that gave us the transformer and pretty much kicked off the entire modern AI revolution we're living in right now. So before this paper came out, this was the million-dollar question. I mean, think about it. If you give an AI a really long, complicated sentence, how does it remember the beginning by the time it gets to the end? How does it figure out which words are connected to which other words, especially if they're far apart? This was the huge bottleneck that was holding language AI back. Okay, so to really get why the transformer was so radical, we got to look at what everyone was doing before. The top AI models at the time, well, they had a very specific and, as it turns out, a very limited way of doing things. I want you to imagine trying to read a book through a tiny pinhole, seeing only one single word at a time. That's pretty much what the old models, things called RNNs and CNNs, were forced to do. They'd read word one, think about it, then move to word two, think about it, and on and on. And you can probably guess the problem, right? By the time the model got to the end of a long sentence, it had pretty much forgotten the crucial context from the beginning. This slide really lays it all out. On the left, you've got the old way. One word at a time, slow, and it forgets things. But on the right, you have the brand new idea from this paper. Process everything at the same time. Instead of that little pinhole, this new model could just look at the whole sentence in one shot and instantly see how every single word relates to every other word. Now, this ability to see everything at once, it wasn't magic. It was all powered by one brilliant core idea that the researchers decided to bet the entire farm on. This was their big aha moment. And that big idea is called the attention mechanism. Just think about how you read a sentence. Your brain doesn't treat every single word with equal importance, does it? Nope. It instinctively hones in on the words that are most critical to the meaning. Attention basically gives an AI that exact same superpower. It lets the model look at all the words at once and decide for itself which ones it needs to pay attention to get the job done. You know, a great way to think about it is like a chef tasting a really complex sauce. A great chef doesn't taste the salt, then the tomato, then the basil one by one. No way. They taste it all at once and instantly understand the balance, the relationships between every single ingredient. That's what attention lets an AI do with words. It sees them all, figures out the relationships, and assigns an importance score to build a complete picture of the sentence's meaning. So, with this incredibly powerful idea of attention as their one and only tool, the researchers built a totally new kind of AI from scratch, and they gave it a name that would become legendary, the Transformer. And this quote from the paper, it just shows you how gutsy this was. I really want you to focus on that last part. Dispensing with recurrence and convolutions entirely. They didn't just add attention to the old models for a little boost. They threw the old models right in the trash and built a brand new one based only on attention. It was a massive, massive gamble. And the key here is that this new design wasn't just different, it was fundamentally better. Because it could see everything at once, it could be parallelized. Now, that's just a fancy way of saying you could throw a ton of computing power at it all at once, and it would learn much, much faster than those old, slow, one-word-at-a-time models. Of course, a cool idea is one thing, but you gotta ask, did it actually work? Well, the paper didn't just bring ideas, it brought receipts, and the proof was absolutely stunning. The first big test was machine translation, which has always been one of the toughest nuts to crack in AI. They put it up against a standard test for translating English to German, and the results, well, they weren't just good, they were record-shattering. The Transformer scored a 28.4 on something called a BLEU score. Now, that number probably doesn't mean much on its own, and that's fine, but what you need to know is that this score beat the previous best models by over 2 full points. In the world of AI research, that's not a step forward, that is a giant leap. And this wasn't just some one-off fluke. To prove it, they then tested it on translating English to French, just to see if the magic held up. And yep, it did. It hit a new state-of-the-art score of 41.8, cementing its place as the undisputed champ for a single model doing this task. The Transformer wasn't just a theory anymore, it was a proven winner. Okay, but here's where it gets even crazier. The incredible quality of the translations, that was only half the breakthrough. The other half, and you could argue it was even more important, was just how ridiculously efficient this thing was. Get this, the paper says it hit these record-breaking results after training for just 3.5 days on only 8 GPUs. That is a tiny fraction of the time and money it took for the older models, which often needed weeks of training on way more hardware. This didn't just make AI better, it made cutting-edge AI faster and more accessible for everyone. But the authors knew, for the Transformer to really be a game changer, it couldn't just be a one-trick pony. It had to be a general-purpose tool that could do more than just translate. And that's exactly what they showed. They took the same basic architecture and applied it to a totally different language problem called constituency parsing, which is basically just figuring out the grammatical structure of a sentence. And it worked brilliantly, even without a ton of training data. This was the proof. The Transformer was a new foundation for all of language AI. So let's bring this all home. By throwing out that old, slow, one-word-at-a-time method and betting everything on attention, the Transformer gave AI a way to see the whole picture. And that one change made our AI models dramatically more powerful, way more efficient to train, and so much more versatile. It is the architecture that powers pretty much every major AI you use today. The title of that paper was such a bold declaration, and it basically set the agenda for AI research for years. But it leaves us with this really fascinating question to think about. We're years on from that revolution now, so what comes next? What's the next radical idea that's going to change everything all over again?